Welcome to East Dundee's regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, dated Monday, September 18th, 2023 at 6 o'clock. Franco, will you take the roll?
All right, Trustee Mahoney is absent. Trustee Kunze?
Present.
Trustee Britton?
Here.
Trustee Saviano?
Here.
Trustee Schreiber is absent. Trustee Sauter?
Here.
And President Lineup.
Here. If you'll all rise with me for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, that'll take us to public comment. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the board on either an agenda or a non-agenda item?
I have 6 here. So the first one is Naeem Khatun. If you want to approach the podium and speak, you can.
About my business?
Whatever you signed up to speak about.
Okay. Good evening, village members. My name is Naeem Khatun. I'm here to thank you for the pre-approval for the special use permit and the car lot located at 455 East Main Street. I read the summary and I read it carefully over and over. And of course, as a citizen of this area, I would like to work with you guys hand by hand to make this area or this community a better place to live and work in it. Especially, I have been doing business and living in this area for the past 25 years. And but 2 things caught my attention and this pre-approval: the number of cars in the lot. I do have a large space. It says on the agenda or on the summary, 31 cars displayed for sale and 21 for employees. I'm not going to have 21 employees in that space or that area, so I'm asking for a variation. And number 2, any question?
Well,
Number 2, the sublease. I have 6,500 square feet of space, and if there's any way, if we can, just do a sublease on that, if you can waive this point, I would appreciate it. And that's about it.
okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Yasser Khatun.
Hi, my name's Yasser. Also here on the car lot on 455 East Main Street. I will be the manager that will potentially be running it, pending approval. The things that I have to comment on, kind of following what Naeem just said about the number of cars that we will have there. Obviously 31 spaces for that large of an area. Seems a little bit small. And then the other thing too is parking cars, around the building. We will surely not park cars on the grass, but we would like consideration to park cars along the side of the building in an area that's not obtrusive to, any of the fire department or, that's going to be an eyesore. To have. And so what we would like for consideration is some space to park the queue of cars along the side of the building, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Akkad Ravanam.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board. I just wanted to also comment on 455 East Main Street. So thank you so much for hearing your consideration. That's actually my dad's practice, and he's been looking to kind of, move on from. He actually faced a really bad stint of COVID, and now he's kind of looking to retire. So that's why we've been, partnering with Naeem and team to look at different options there. I think you guys have kind of already given us a sign of a sense of approval in some sense, but I know that there are a couple of stipulations that they're kind of looking for to kind of seal the deal essentially, and we're just obviously wondering if you could give some consideration in that. And obviously it's been a really hard time for my family, and it takes a lot for me to just be here and speak to the board. So I really appreciate any consideration you guys could have in terms of making this deal happen. Thank you so much.
Susan Barzakini.
Good evening, Village Board. My name is Susan Barzakini. I'm a resident here in East Dundee. And I'm here to ask you to consider allowing Duke to have his smokers in the parking lot there here in East Dundee. And I'm basing that on a couple of things I'd like to share with you today. I have a little something I've written out earlier. My husband, Mike Barzakini, and I met Duke Seward at the Depot Market while he was cooking on a portable Weber grill in 2016. This is a photo that I had taken of him at that time. And he had recipes handed down from his family in Mississippi for barbecue, and he was sharing these recipes and these foods which he grilled for anyone wanting to taste something nearly magical. On the day that we met him, he had cooked a total of 100 pounds of food on that little tiny grill there at the Depot Market. He was living the American dream right here in our lovely village of East Dundee. He had something to offer in a way of small enterprise, and he was chasing that dream one smoked morsel at a time. Instantly, we bonded with Duke. Most people instantly bond with him. He has a dynamic energy that just rolls off of him. He's a person who brings light and joy into the hearts of others and asks for little to nothing in return. You can experience that in the way that he greets people with a genuine smile and a hug. Duke followed that American dream as if it were a thread of gold. He reeled in that thread of gold by looking for a place to permanently cook and serve his food. He was one man supported wholeheartedly by his mother Mary and his father Tansy. Mike and I were hopeful that Duke would follow his dream by landing it right here in East Dundee. We love our little village, and we believe in the possibilities that the village has to offer. You can only imagine our overwhelmingly joy that we learned when we learned that Duke landed the opportunity to share his food and positive vibes and his message of love to our community in the little red caboose. Duke married his life partner, his soulmate, Rhiannon. He had a baby girl, and later they would have a boy. He was working around the clock, chasing that dream to make the best barbecue nationwide. All of this was happening right here in our village. Duke didn't just stop at unfolding his dream at the caboose. He opened his arms and his heart to our community to make other people's dreams fulfilled as well. He gave back, and he continues to give back. Duke and Rhiannon founded Taste of Love, which is a nonprofit and assisted our area restaurant workers who were unable to work during the pandemic. They raised more than $30,000 to make that happen. The nonprofit also has raised money towards helping students with scholarships. My favorite way that Duke has helped this community is the Food is Love community dinner. Over the Christmas holiday, they bring Christmases to anybody who wants food, music, presents, and holiday cheer, and of course, love. They work tirelessly to bring joy to others as their gift to our community here in East Dundee. Annually, Duke and his family host the Duke's Blues and Barbecue Festival. He brings music and people to the community from all over the nation. One of the musicians is my friend Ruth Ward, who was on the David Letterman show. The funds generated from this festival go into the nonprofit bank to help others in our community. This music is free to our small community, and it is exceptionally executed in a manner worthy of charging all who comes to tap toes with some of the best musicians in our nation. Are you sensing a theme here with all that I've mentioned? The theme is love. This is such a positive and rare message for one person's vision, being spread throughout the conduit of his business. Love brings people together. Duke brings people together. Duke brings people here to East Dundee. He is iconic, and his humble beginnings at the Depot Market has flourished into an enterprise worthy of watching grow further right here in our village of East Dundee. Thank you so much for your attention and your time. And thank you, Duke, for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Dan Hart.
Council, my name is Dan Hart. I own DC Cobb's just up the road. I was going to send you guys an email, and I happened to be in town and found out there was a meeting, so I figured I'd stop by. I'm not sure the validity to it, but somebody that was in our restaurant mentioned that the board may be considering the possibility of doing open carry in the square area. As a business owner, I just wanted on the record voice, I'm really against that. While I know the idea of it can seem really nice, there's a lot of things that need to be considered. The state of Illinois, unfortunately, is one of the only states with dram shop insurance and dram shop laws, making the liability for us as business owners and liquor servers, in my opinion, really overreach. Having an open carry on this area, I think, would lead to more of that. I'm worried about how it would infect our insurance policies. I'd be very worried about people bringing outside alcohol. And one of the things I've seen in other areas that have attempted things like this is they end up increasing their homeless and vagrant population because people find out there's open alcohol in these areas. They come around, start staying in the areas, and are grabbing open containers of alcohol, doing things like that. I would not, if I was able, allow people to come in with outside alcohol from any other establishments. I don't know if it's even true that you guys are considering this, but I just want to voice with a very large investment into this community. I've recently bought property here. I would really strongly urge you to reconsider this. If you even are, I'm not positive it's even something that's actually happening, but I would be really worried about it and really worried about the regulations going along with it, the policing of it. You know, I think it would lead to a multitude of problems, and I just would like to voice that I would be very strongly against you guys passing something like this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Shannon Cole.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come speak tonight, and just wanted to thank your story here about all the accomplishments and gifts that Duke brings to East Dundee. A little bit about myself. I live in Dundee up by Sleepy Hollow, and I probably spend 80% of my time in East Dundee with my family, whether it's attending the car shows, Thirsty Thursdays, Wine Down Wednesdays, visiting the local establishments for dinner, and just having a good time. One of the most beautiful gifts that this community has to offer is all of the different things that the town brings. As everyone knows, Duke brings such a big gift, and it would be such a loss not only to this community but everyone that attends and comes to these fests for him to be absent and not be able to operate his business as he should be able to. It makes me sad that we're even up here having to discuss this, but I do understand that maybe there's been some complaints. I don't know how validated they are. Maybe there's folks asking, well, I want parking spaces as well, so how can we come to the table and make reasonable decisions tonight so that Duke and his family and all of us who cherish what he has to offer can still enjoy this lovely community. I do want to provide a brief comment from Sue Berna, who was not able to be here tonight, but she is a local business owner that attended the Summer Midwest Market Gift and Clothing Show this summer. And when she told people she was from West Dundee, people automatically came up to her and says, you must know Duke, Duke's Barbecue. And these people were from all over the country, Michigan, North Carolina, Wisconsin, New York City. That says something. You guys have a true gift here. So I'm hoping tonight that everyone can come to the table to make reasonable accommodations, whatever that might be, to appease the community, but to also allow this beautiful gift to his family and what they have to offer. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's all.
I'm here to talk about agenda item 6B. Can I do that when you call that item?
You may, if you, yeah, absolutely.
Rather than-
Okay, good enough, good enough. Yeah. Is there anybody else that would like to address the board? Seeing none. Okay, that'll take us to our consent agenda. And I'm sorry for the length of it, but if we could have a motion.
I would
Can
like
I-
to move item C out of the consent agenda.
And I would like to move item H.
Items C and item B.
So you can make the motion just subtracting those two, but you don't have to read it all. Okay.
Okay.
Would just do items, are they?
I mean, we should read it into the record. right? It doesn't matter. We should read it into the record. It does not matter.
No, I mean, you can have Caitlin opine on it, but it's not required to read it into.
So we
Okay,
just do
fine.
A through K.
Well, then I will move to approve the consent agenda, items A, B, D, E, F, G, I, J, and K.
Second?
Is there any discussion on any items on that? Seeing none. Franco?
Trustee Coonsey,
Yes.
trustee Britton,
Yes.
trustee Saviano,
Yes.
and Sauter.
Yes. Okay, that'll take us to our regular agenda items. So we can start by moving item B to the front. That would be the...
C?
B.
From the consent agenda?
No, item B, from the, we're in the regular agenda items.
I know, but don't we have to discuss the two consent agenda
Oh,
items?
yes, I thought you wanted to just table. Okay, sure. C, I'm sorry.
Do we have to
We can,
do those in order, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter if you do them first, they can be done under the
Okay.
regular agenda item if there's an item that you wanted to.
No, no, no,
involve
I have
first.
no objection. If you want to go ahead, Sarah.
what am I doing?
I think we
Do you want to do item C or do you want to
Okay.
reorder the agenda? I'll make a motion to approve an ordinance amending Village Code, Chapter 116, alcoholic beverages penalty.
Second.
I just had one question on this. I understand we're updating our code to match the state law. My question is on the last paragraph where it says, in addition to any other penalties set forth in this chapter, the Liquor Commission may order the licensee to pay costs incurred by the village in preparing or hearing the case, including but not limited to reasonable attorney fees and court reporter fees. And I'm wondering if that is also in the state law text or if we added that ourselves.
I would have to look up the stat. It's certainly something you can add and a reasonable thing to include if these things, charges are, you know, we'd have to go before the Liquor Commission and use the village prosecutor. Whether or not that language is in the statute, I would need to look up the liquor code to confirm
Well,
that.
I just feel like it leaves it very open to whatever it can be. I mean, we could set it to be $15,000 worth of lawyer fees and court fees and whatnot, and the person, they would just have to pay. What is to stop us from doing that? Or a liquor commission from doing that?
Well, of course, attorney's fees at any level have to be reasonable and proven by the up to the in the circuit court, to the court, in an administrative proceeding, to the liquor commissioner, to the hearing officer, and you have to account for what those costs are. You can't just say I came to this meeting and it costs $15,000 for the bill. It would have to, and the inclusion of the reasonable attorney's fees is, I think, and the court costs as well, account for that. But it certainly isn't an amount that can be just given if you want to include attorney's fees and court costs. There's some that could go to a full-fledged hearing that could take briefing and multiple days that would cost much more than something that was just a settlement agreement was reached and didn't proceed any further. So putting in a number in for if you want to account for those costs is difficult, but you certainly can modify the language if the board is not comfortable with that text.
Okay. Yeah, I guess if we have to show invoices, then that makes some sense. I'm okay with that then.
Is there any other questions on C? No? No? Franco?
Trustee Kunzi,
Yes.
Trustee Britton,
Yes.
Trustee Saviano,
Yes.
and Trustee Sauter.
Yes. That was then, I'm sorry. Item H then? Sarah, did you have questions on this one? Do you want to make a motion? Or you made the motion from the other one, Scott? Was this your item?
No, but I will make the motion. I will move to approve an ordinance amending Village Code Chapter 72 parking regulations to restrict parking of commercial and recreational vehicles, trailers, and truck tractors.
Second.
Second.
Sorry. I did have a few questions on this one, mostly about the limited amount of time to have any kind of trailer parked on the street. I completely agree. Overnight parking is pretty rough for larger vehicles, things like that. I don't like that they're still open to the call-in policy that we have for vehicles, like if you're getting your driveway paved or something like that. But I do feel like the 2-hour limit is really, really tight. If you're getting your yard done, if you're getting a tree trimmed, if you're getting work done on your house, things like that. If you've got a work vehicle attached to a trailer on a street, that's a very tight amount of time to have that allowed. And I think that we should look at either striking that part or making it certain hours of the day. Like work vehicles can be parked when somebody's having work done on the house or something like that. I don't know. I felt like that was too limiting for this.
Deputy Chief, would you like to explain the rationale behind the 2-hour recommendation and if you would be open to any other recommendation?
I'm going to defer to Chief Kruger.
I didn't see you there. I was like, where's Chief? And I saw you.
He's hiding today.
Thank you, appreciate it. So the two sections of the ordinance, I think, and it sounds like the unsecured trailer, I don't think there's an issue with, if I'm reading it correctly, the first half of this.
Yeah,
the ordinance.
I
I think that's a significant safety issue,
Right.
unstable, easy to be stolen,
Yep.
and so forth. As far as the 2-hour, that's kind of a consistent ordinance that we see in other communities.
Okay.
I certainly wouldn't have a significant issue, or whether or not it's a dusk issue or something like that. It was more a concern about overall length
Yeah.
and obscuring vision and children going through it and playing and
Yep.
stuff being more of an issue than somebody that's actively having work done. I think that's a whole different.
Right, and that's the
thing.
thing. I just don't want
It's more like parking, not
Right, I
in
don't want what
use.
we codify to have any gray area as far as that goes. I think I'm on your page, right? I don't want the street to be treated as parking
Yeah.
for any long vehicle for a length of time. But the way it's worded right now kind of prohibits work vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, if at the board's discretion, if you felt like to amend it to 4 hours or something that
Like
was
an hour a
reasonable.
day,
so
like
that
dawn to
would-
dusk or
For
something.
public safety, but also for,
Okay.
for us to make some allowances.
I mean, the other thing is, for the most part, if somebody's doing work on the house, they're going in and out. It's not just hanging out there all day. It's
Right,
being
which is
used.
different. When you talk about parking, we mean unattended, just
Okay.
left there, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I would be fine with making it 4 hours personally. I would imagine that even at 2 hours, by the time somebody even sees the trailer, you're going to have an hour or two before somebody even sees it, and then the clock starts. So
Yeah, I was just thinking of, like I said, it's, the days that you're getting work done on your house, if your driveway's not big enough to park a trailer in, you gotta
Yeah.
park it on the street in front, and, you know, like I said, we're talking about mostly unattended here, and I think that that's the key word, is unattended trailer, as opposed to a trailer that's being used throughout the day. It's just attached to a vehicle. So that's, I think that happy little word unattended is making my life better. So I'd say 4 hours. Would we be okay with 4 hours unattended?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Do you want to make the motion?
I will, do I have to amend my motion to?
Yes.
Yes. So I will amend my motion to carry a 4-hour time limit on unattended. Well, let's see how it's written here.
Attached trailers.
Just say section B.
4 hours in section.
So, okay, so 4 hours in section B rather than 2.
All right. Is there any other questions, discussion?
Is there a second for that?
Second, sorry, that was my second.
What about that? Okay, Franklin.
Trustee Kunzi?
Yes.
Britton?
Yes.
Saviano?
Yes.
Sauter?
Yes. Okay.
Thanks.
That takes care of the consent agenda. It'll bring us to our regular agenda items. I'd like to have a motion to move item B up to the front of the list.
Do we need to move motion for that, or can we just?
It can be done by
Just
motion.
move- Just,
Yeah.
just direct.
So
Yeah.
moved.
Second.
You don't need a roll call on that, though. You
Yeah.
can just voice it.
And voice vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So this would be the PAL.
So we're gonna make the motion, all right?
Yeah, we have to make the motion to actually do
We just, we voted to move it up. And we can make the motion.
Well,
itself.
make the motion now.
I will move to approve an ordinance approving a preliminary planned unit development plan and rezoning for Pal Land LLC and Pal Land 2 LLC located in the M1, R1, and B3 zoning districts in East Dundee at the Terra Business Park Phase 2.
Second.
Second, okay. Peter, would you like to address the board? Okay.
Before Peter speaks, I'll just introduce this item. So we've been working with the applicant on this for the better part of 6 or 7 months. It's been through planning and zoning, lots of considerations made on both sides to come to an agreement that I think is best represents the best interests of the village. The applicant will give you his disagreements, but in the end, staff would still recommend the version that's in the packet this evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is essentially just the phase 2 piece, right?
So good evening, Village Board. My name is Peter Bezos. I'm representing here tonight the petitioner of Pal Land and Pal Land 2, which is the alter ego of Joe Palumbo, who's here with me this evening, as well as his son Joey, his operations manager Jeff Newing, and his operations manager Dave Pedersen. I've just given you a handout, and I'm going to try and be brief, but I think background is critical here. So we're here this evening seeking the approval of an extension of the Terra Business Park PUD that this board first approved in 2007 with respect to 119 acres of land out of 150 acres that Mr. Palumbo's entities then owned. This original 119 acres is essentially directly below the lake and slightly to the right. So it's everything kind of below the lake with the line extended. So now here we are in 2023, 16 years later, and this 116-acre PUD has been developed with 4 industrial buildings, a speedway.
Mr. Bezos, can we interrupt for a second?
I'm
We all
sorry?
have different versions of this handout, so I'm not sure what your intention was, but
We have 2 different exhibits here.
2 different exhibits?
do you want everybody to have 2 copies of the same thing, or his is different than mine? So you have an answer.
This one indicates Palumbo property
That's
PUD
okay.
exhibit.
It won't make
This
any
one-
difference
No?
in terms of what we're talking about.
Okay.
Let's see, you don't have something with this on it?
This is the one that, this
Yeah,
is the one that I
It's just a
have.
smaller
Yeah.
scale.
Okay, good enough. Thank
So I was saying, 16 years later, there have been 4 industrial buildings built and tenantized. I believe there's no vacancies, or if so, they're rare. A Speedway fueling facility that is operating and bringing the village substantial sales tax revenue. And Enterprise that bought its facility just immediately south of the lake. Other than Speedway and Enterprise, Mr. Palumbo's entities continue to own and lease this entire parcel. Mr. Palumbo is now under construction on an 11,000 square foot retail and commercial building just slightly behind the, not completely behind, but to the rear of the Speedway. He agreed to do this in the last redevelopment agreement that we were before you on. It was part of the quid pro quo, and he's doing it. Also, as part of that same redevelopment agreement, in I think 2017 or 18, the amendment, he agreed to build, excuse me, a 46,000 square foot industrial building up near Penny Road, and you can see it's the thing with the label on the far upper right-hand corner. It says 200 Rock Road. So permits have been submitted to the village, but we've been kind of waiting. It was part of the PUD that's before you today. We've been kind of waiting for IDOT to approve the elimination of the angular Penny Road connection into Route 68 with a straight connection straight up to Route 68. And your engineer, village engineer, Mr. Hines, can better brief you on that, but IDOT definitely moving at glacial pace. So since 2007, Mr. Palumbo has acquired additional acreage, and now east of the lake, and it's essentially everything on this picture east of the lake. Since he was going to build this 46,000 square foot building that we just talked about up near Penny Road, he decided to submit to you what we call phase 2 of this Terra Business Park PUD. And it's shown to you in the upper right-hand corner. It's a 5-lot subdivision. But for reasons I'm going to explain to you, unless the village board can modify this ordinance that's now before you, I think we're going to have no choice but to withdraw this petition, and I hope we don't have to do that. In the Phase 2 application for the Phase 2 PUD up in the north corner, which is only 33 acres, we originally asked for the same departures that were approved in the Phase 1 PUD. The setback yards were different and the parking setbacks, et cetera. And while the village staff supported us on many of those, they didn't support the request on many of the others, which again, were just matching what was done in Phase 1. The Planning and Zoning Commission essentially approved what the staff recommended. We then met with staff, had one face-to-face meeting and a follow-up Zoom meeting, and we made a little progress there, but not, we still didn't get staff support for the departures that we had received from this board in 2007. But we moved forward, we moved through that. Mr. Palumbo agreed to the reduced departures, and he also agreed to the staff's request that as we build out this subdivision, not just the 33 acres you see there, but as we continue to come south, that we put an 8-foot combined sidewalk and bike path on one side of the street to help to achieve the village's connectivity and bike path aspirations. So he agreed to that. But this is where we've hit a brick wall, and I'll like to hand out a couple more things to you. The first thing I'm going to hand out to you, well, one of the items I'm handing out to you, let me do it first. So the two handouts that I gave you, one is a redacted portion of the ordinance that's before you tonight. It shows on the back page the changes that we feel should be made. And the other page that starts with 91.05 are just excerpts from your village municipal code. So what's the problem? As drafted, if you look at the language in section 6A, if you can either read what I gave you or look at the ordinance before you, it says, this is how the village staff proposes it. If the applicant or owner fails to comply with any of the terms or conditions set forth in this ordinance or with the applicable codes and ordinances of the village, then the approvals granted in this ordinance shall immediately probably be rendered null and void and of no further force or effect. So why is that problematic? Well, taken literally, and that's how you have to take an ordinance, look at these ordinances that I gave you out of your village code. So obstructing streets. So one of Mr. Palumbo's tenants maybe puts something in the street, parks a truck or something, shouldn't be there. Builders occupying streets. Some builder is working on a building and he does something he's not supposed to there. Debris in the street. Somebody's working on their buildings and all of a sudden there's some debris and the police department comes along and whoop, there's debris in the streets. Advertising. Again, Mr. Palumbo's not going to do this stuff, but again, we're responsible for what our tenants do. Snow on the sidewalks, failing to clear the snow on the sidewalks. Public nuisances. The next side, noxious plants and the like. So weeds are growing somewhere. Control of rats, I put that in, but it's in your code. Inoperable motor vehicles. One of his tenants parks an inoperable motor vehicle on private property, which is a no-no. So all of a sudden, there's a citation for one of these things. Let's just assume it happened. And that's why you got a citation. This ordinance is immediately null and void. Now, we can't live with that. Why can't we live with that? We have a lender that if you approve this PUD tonight, is going to loan him money to build not only this 46,000 square foot building, but 4 other buildings in this PUD. There's not a lender we can think of that would say, oh, you've got the zoning, but all of a sudden, whoosh, it's just gone. Just gone. I've never seen anything like this in a zoning ordinance. If the owner does one of these things or his tenant, there's absolutely administrative remedies that this village has where you cite them for a building code violation or a village code violation. They either pay the fine or they come and they contest the hearing. At a hearing, you have a hearing judge that administers your ordinances. So you have plenty of remedies if somebody does this, and we're not advocating that we don't have to follow these rules. But the zoning ordinance just can't vanish. I mean, it's just completely unworkable. And what would that do to previously constructed buildings? Let's say we got 2 buildings up and then something like that happened. Now the ordinance vanishes. We built it according to departures that we agreed to. And now the ordinance vanishes, so now the departures are no longer approved. So now those buildings are non-conforming. So I'd appreciate it if you'd look at the language in the handout I gave you, because with the simple language changes in A, you get exactly where you need to get, which is that the village shall have the right to enforce this ordinance. And I guess I've got a couple more things to say to you, but this isn't a case that you're dealing with a developer that you've had nothing but problems with. I mean, if this developer had built a development over there and constantly got them up for ordinance violations and constantly this and constantly that, and now you're giving him yet another ordinance, I could kind of understand saying, you know, this is your last chance, buddy. I mean, if you do anything wrong, this ordinance is just going to vanish. And I still don't think you should do it that way, but at least I could understand where it's coming from. That's how he's being treated. Not only won't his lenders accept it, I don't understand where it's coming from. Let's move on to the next section. Section 6B, as drafted by the staff, says what you would be doing tonight if you pass this ordinance is approving the preliminary plat of this 33 acres. It says that if the final plat is not submitted within 1 year after the date of this ordinance, then this PUD ordinance shall automatically become null and void. Automatically. Well, first of all, there's an inconsistency because at the end of section 4A of the ordinance, we agreed that the 1 year period would be measured by the date that IDOT finally approves the road extension, because we can't final plat this 33 acres and fix Rock Road to go straight to Route 68 until IDOT signs off on it. And the staff agreed to that language in 4A. But then in 6B, it says if we don't final plat, the ordinance becomes null and void. Now, is this maybe a drafting error? I tried to get it fixed with staff. We couldn't seem to communicate. I want you to also know that 157.24 is referenced in your several places in section 6 of the ordinance before you. This is a section in your village code that says, once the village approves a preliminary PUD, the owner applicant has a year to get a final PUD approved. Okay, but we already dealt with that in 4A because of IDOT. It's a year from when IDOT approves, we have to get our final plat approved. We're good with that. It also says, once the final plat is approved, the owner has 3 years to begin construction. We're good with that too. But your ordinance then says, and if one of those things doesn't happen, then the village board may, at its own initiation, either terminate the PUD or grant extensions of time. Right? You guys passed the ordinance. If you want to enforce it, you say you've been unreasonable, Mr. Palumbo, we're going to yank it. Okay, we can discuss it at that time. Or you can grant extensions. But the staff has drafted this so that you have no input now. It's an automatic null and void of this ordinance. And again, we can't live with that. We just can't. It's not like we're being stubborn. We can't get development loans with vanishing zoning ordinances. And I would venture to say, I don't think I've ever seen one in 30 years of zoning practice. The last, so if you look at my suggested language in B, then it says this ordinance shall be subject to revocation as provided in, and there's a typo, it should say 157.254. Just referring back to what's in your code. Frankly, there's not even any need to put this in this ordinance. That section 154 applies to every PUD you ever approve. You approve it, and if people don't act, you can revoke it. But if they want to say it here, that's fine, but not make it automatic. And finally, section 6C, as drafted by the staff, again says that any non-compliance with section 157.24 automatically makes this PUD ordinance null and void. Now, I know you said, I've heard this. But again, it's redundant, and it's the same problem with us. We just can't, as a developer, live with this and get financing. So I guess what we're asking you to do is to adopt these amendments that I've handed out to you as an amendment to the proposed ordinance, or table the matter and see if we can work out some other language, but we won't be able to work it out if the staff insists upon automatic termination. But if none of those are acceptable and you want to just go with the ordinance as Erica is recommending, I regretfully tell you that we are hereby withdrawing that petition. So it's a conditional withdrawal. I humbly ask you to amend the ordinance like this, but if not, the ordinance should be deemed, or the petition should be deemed withdrawn. There's nothing to approve. Thank you. I can answer any questions or let you discuss.
Well, thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. And we also, as a village, appreciate our relationship that we have with Joe and the PAL group. With specifics to sections A, B, and C, certainly A is referring to the applicant or the owner. So with regard to any issues that take place from a tenant, that really wouldn't apply. So in the instance that you recommended or suggested rather that there was debris in the road or there was an obstacle or whatever, as long as it wasn't PAL equipment, this really doesn't apply.
Mr. Mayor, I respectfully don't agree with that. The owner is responsible for his tenants.
True enough, but any citation that would result of this would go to the tenant. It wouldn't go to the owner. We would hope, of course, and expect that the owner is going to work with the tenant to make sure that these ordinances are adhered to. However, if it came down to a citation actually being issued and it wasn't workable, it would certainly go to the tenant before it went to the owner. So I don't know if we're really too hung up on item A, if that's the extent of it. With regard to item B, yeah, I realize that IDOT is, like you say, moves at a glacial pace. And I wouldn't have any objection to setting the PUD or the timelines that you have after approval of IDOT.
We're not in disagreement with the staff on that. It's just contradicted here in B.
Well, and if there is a contradiction, we can certainly look to it and see if we can clear it up. Then the extension of the language of section 4A to apply to 6B, I don't really feel that's anything to get hung up on either, because it's already in the code as well. So if it applies and it's workable and it's agreeable to everybody, I don't have any issues with it being applied to 6B either. 6C, if it is really just a redundancy of previous code or mentioned previously, then we can look to either eliminate it or revise it so that it isn't. There's no point in having any redundancies in our codes. However, I'm sure, given the length of our codes, given the age of our codes, and how long it's been since we've had a complete house cleaning of those codes, there are probably some things that...
Let me clarify for you, Mr. Mayor, that the redundancy is not between C and other parts of your municipal code. It's between C and A and B. It's already covered in A and B. But it says the same thing as A and B, as if you don't do this, it's automatically revoked. And we can't live with the automatically revoked. But even if we could, why say it in C, is to your point. You don't have to say things twice.
Well, true.
May I interject? May I ask staff?
Yes.
If there is concern about the proposal here?
So if you notice the date on this, it's September 17th. So I received this yesterday.
Oh,
I
okay.
had no time to review it.
Okay.
And I think there's a couple of options that the board can consider this evening.
Okay.
You can approve the ordinance as presented by staff. We can go back and table the item yet again and see if we can come to some agreement on some alternate language.
Yeah.
Or what I would not recommend is that we take a piece of paper that was delivered to us not even 24 hours ago and say yes to something that we haven't had time to fully vet. I think that would be irresponsible.
Yeah.
So let me, Madam Trustee, say that one of the options, which is approve the ordinance as presented by staff, is not an option because the petition is hereby withdrawn if that's the intention of the board.
And if you withdraw it, then you just go back through the process again.
That's true. That's true. And maybe not. Maybe we'll just build the building on Rock Road on a big piece of land and just forget about another PUD. That's one of the options. But let me, I want to speak to something that Erica said. She just got this on the 17th. So last week, I was working with Erica and your partner, Kelly. I don't know her last name. And Kelly sent me the ordinance that's before you tonight on Monday, so a week ago. And I said, okay, I'll look at it, Kelly, thank you. And Kelly called me on Tuesday, the next day, and said, can you possibly get your comments to me this afternoon because Erica's going on a trip and she wants to publish the agenda on Wednesday, last Wednesday. Okay, so I actually got them to Kelly on Wednesday, a red line, and said, let me know what you think. This was last Wednesday. I didn't hear anything. So on Thursday, I called Kelly in her car, and she said, the staff has put the ordinance on the agenda as we sent it to you. If you don't like it, talk to the board.
Okay.
So not all of us have been really treated with, I don't know, professional, normal courtesies in terms of having a chance to go back and forth. And I just don't think that's the right way to do it. But that's why you got it just a couple days ago, because I got it a couple days before that.
Well, I don't think it serves anybody to go tit for tat on who did what and when and where and why. This item first appeared on this agenda 6 weeks ago. So
it
is what it is.
It wasn't agreed to then, and we're hoping to come to an agreement. Coming to an agreement is an important part of legislation, right? Especially when it's a petition.
Okay. Can we make a motion to table?
I would
to
recommend
review
it.
this language?
I would like to table it.
Because I'd like to look it over. I don't want to make any rash decisions. And
Can you table it to a date certain or just table it?
it's October 2nd, our next meeting.
Well, yeah, we need to meet prior, of course, and I apologize for the mix-ups. I realize, the idea of suspending a PUD is an expensive proposition, especially if you have to come back and resubmit. It's costly, and I would rather us avoid that.
Try and work it out?
Absolutely.
We'll try.
Absolutely.
So if you just table it, and then
Oh,
I'm sure Erica will let you know if and when we're ready to come back.
Okay.
I will say, having reviewed it and spoken with Kelly, Kelly did work very diligently on this, as I'm sure you already
she
all
did.
know. And I think she's not here to speak to that, but I know she worked very hard on this and spoke with me to get me up to speed on all of this. And, having reviewed it and spoken with Kelly, I will say I don't think that these, I wouldn't, with Erica, that I would not support you or recommend you approve it as is, but I don't think these are, we're wildly different at this point that we won't be able to come to a agreement on these.
I have no criticism. Please tell Kelly of Kelly. Kelly's just the messenger.
All right.
Okay,
So we'll go ahead and we'll reschedule that then, and we'll
you're going to
Do we
table
need a
it?
motion to
contact,
table?
yes. So we'll need a motion to table.
I'll make a motion to table.
Second. Okay, Trustee Coonsey?
Yes.
Trustee Britton?
Yes.
Trustee Saviano?
Yes.
Trustee Sauter?
Yes.
Thanks for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. We've had one other request to move an item up in the rotation. I'm hoping that our riverfront people will accommodate us. If we could we have item D, a motion to move item D up next in line?
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Voice vote? Aye. Okay, so if we could have a motion then for, item D is really just a discussion on the operations of the vehicle-owned caboose and the usage of public parking spaces. So we've heard from a couple of members of the public on this. I guess what we could do is just start the discussion quickly. Andy, do you want to weigh in?
So yeah, it sounds like, as a summary, this is being brought up because of the parking issue and these spots that sounds like me. I wasn't here when we made the initial proposals and approved them, and then I think there were 2 years, it's 2018, 2019, and 2020 that it passed. But as far as I can remember back, there were smokers in those probably 2 spots. And as far as I knew, that was the intention. But it sounds like now we're saying it was never intended to be smoked in. But it does seem like that was not something that was brought up at any of the renewals. It's become an issue because parking is more of an issue now, that there's kind of a change in decision of wanting those parking spots for people to park in. But since we're in a contract with Duke, I feel like playing out this lease and then re-reviewing when this lease is done is probably a better way to allow the smokers in the spots, because they have been used throughout all this time, that it doesn't seem like something that has been brought up as on day 1 or a year later it wasn't brought up that you were expected to smoke in the caboose or somewhere else and bring it. So on that issue, I'm kind of lenient towards allowing those spots where I normally wouldn't for a business to change and start pulling in parking spots that we do need. But since that's an existing relationship, I kind of see that as different. But looking through the agreements that we had, it does seem like one thing that I would want to push in exchange for that is keeping more hours so that we get more of Duke and not less, like having I think only Mondays he was closed originally, and now it's just the weekends that are open. And even sometimes it's not open if there's an event going on in West Dundee or somewhere else. So I think I'd be okay with the spots being used for smoking to the duration of this lease, but would also ask to see the booth manned on regular hours more often. That's just my opinion, but if anybody else wants to follow up.
I feel the same about the parking spots. It's not as if we are pulling parking spots that have been used for patrons to park in. It's already been there. The smokers have been there and used. And as far as the smell of the smoke and all that, there's smokers in other establishments. I know Diamond Gins has it outside, so I wouldn't want to single one smoker out and not the others. So I'm fine with it. Same thing, I think, when upon the lease renewal, let's discuss it for a new lease, but I say I'm good with it as is. And I would like to see you there more. But I understand how busy you are, so I get it. So, thank you. That's it.
Scott.
Yeah, I mean, to say we're going to codify this stuff is, all we're doing is codifying what has been happening for the past 4 years, or however many years it's been, 3 years. So it's not like we're changing anything by putting this into the lease. I guess I would follow along with Andy and say, yeah, we could renegotiate the lease when the time is up, which I think is coming up fairly soon. So, yeah, my feeling is I'm okay with keeping things the way they are, and I also agree, though, that we should ask for more consistent hours. You know, that's honestly something that I hear the most, is that when they go to Duke's, it's closed. What's that? Yeah. I'm just telling you, that's what I hear from people.
That just says something about how many people want your food.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's it.
Sarah?
I don't have a lot to add. I would like to say that we've had things come up repeatedly, so can we please make sure the lease is, what we have in writing is clear for this? I don't want you to have to keep coming before us to ask permission to do things you're already doing, right? Like, I just want to make sure that what we've got is clear for this. I'm good with it. I'm good with more hours, please, so I can have lunch during the week. But also, I completely lost my train of thought. Something Scott said, and it's gone now. So, yeah, I mean, I'm fine with the parking spaces. We can renegotiate when it comes back up in a couple of years. I just really want to, like, let's make sure that what we have in there is accurate and it's right and there's no more questions. I will, like Tricia said about multiple establishments have smokers. Like, we can't ban smoking. Maybe we want to look at hours of the day that it's cool, maybe stop at a certain time. I don't know, like, if that's where the problem's coming from. I don't even know where the problem's coming from. So if it's really just somebody doesn't like the smell of the smoker, then I have to apologize. We have one. So, that's people in town have them, other restaurants and other establishments have them, so that's going to be a hard thing for me to say. But if it's something like don't smoke at midnight, then maybe we don't have, I don't think that's the problem. But, that would be the only thing I could see, is if we need to put hours around it. But
Yeah, that was one of the things I was going to suggest, that it seems like there's a consensus to proceed with modifying the lease to allow for it. I know you want to speak, I'm sorry, I have a couple clarifying questions, and it will help continue the discussion. If it is going to be allowed, what are the allowable hours? We should definitely put some hours around it to sort of, and this is something that we can work out, over the course of the next couple weeks before we bring this back. But the hours are already in the lease. It's just sort of like this, been loosey-goosey followed. So, I can work with Duke to come up with fall hours and summer hours, and then we can codify them into the lease and then make sure that it's open when it says it's going to be open. The other thing I wanted to mention was, the village has been in the process of acquiring the lumberyard and the parking lot, and the goal of the acquisition of the lumberyard is to redevelop that property into, a commercial corridor, and then that would create a real street instead of a public parking lot.
Right.
And once that is a real street, this use would be subject to much different regulation, because it would be on the street and not on a private parking lot. So I want to make that super clear to everybody so that nobody's surprised in a couple of years when that becomes a street, that this may not work forever, but it may work for the next couple of years.
Yeah, I would, I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I
That
don't
was
think
very
you want
good.
your smokers on a street either.
Yeah, the other thing is the winter plan. So once the caboose is winterized, will there be smoking operations allowed during the winter, or will that not be allowed? And is the caboose open during the winter hours?
Yeah, so the caboose, so just to piggyback on his point as far as the smokers were never there, that was actually false. So in 2018, Chris sent me an email, Dolores actually approved it. I got around it too. That stated that they actually were going to approve for me to have a smokehouse. Chris sent me all the stuff to get. We just couldn't agree on the price point. That was in 2018. I got the email. I can forward it over to you. I also couldn't give you Dolores' statement where she gave me the okay with Jennifer Johnson to put in a smokehouse. I just didn't put in the smokehouse because when I was going to have it done, it was going to be $8,000 from what I thought was going to kind of look good and look cool. But Chris wanted me to put in some other stuff, and I could send it over to you. And it was a 12 by 12 fenced-in smokehouse that was sent in 2018 from Jennifer Johnson and Chris. And you're on the board then too. Another thing I would like to address is the harassment that I received over the years, stemming from, unfortunately, it's the mayor of your town. It started with Terry Donati harassing my employees. I let Erica know that. He sent Tracy into a panic attack by cursing her out, pulling up next to the smoker, tell her that the village was going to get rid of the caboose and the smokers, and this was her last week working. I notified Erica about that. Also, I read about the smoke going into the Anvil Club. I was under the impression if you're a mayor of any city that you're supposed to represent the people as a whole, not just favor your friend. There's plenty of smokers in this town. There's plenty of smokers at Rosie's. There's smokers at Diamond Gems. There's smokers up the street. So why is it that I'm the only one being singled out for smoking? I don't find that fair at all, to be honest with you.
Just to clarify, we're trying to add this to your lease so you can be compliant.
Yeah, I know. I get that, but what I'm saying is he just stated that, like, he's acting as if, like, this is all new. You know what I mean? Like, in 2000, you know, like, the smokers have always kind of been there, and now all of a sudden it's always kind of becoming an issue. You know, like, that's the thing.
The issue was, why this came up was because you were taking up 3 parking spaces. And I let you know that the lease
Correct.
doesn't allow for you to take up any parking spaces, and that if you wanted to take up parking spaces, that we needed to amend the lease.
Correct.
So that's why we're here today, to get information on what to put in your lease to amend it so that you can do what you need to do in the manner that you have been doing it.
Correct.
And be compliant. So I'm sorry if you have experienced what you have experienced, but I'm trying to help you here, and so is the board, so.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, at some point it becomes tiresome, is all I'm saying.
It certainly does.
It does.
And there's been no persecution of you, Duke, from this board. You know that.
It hasn't been from the
Suggest
board.
otherwise
It has not
is-
been from the board. It's only been from you, Jeff.
From me?
Correct.
Oh, well, I would just advise the board and let them know that in the event that you decide to allow these parking spaces to be used for these smokers, that's the issue here. We have to be prepared to have every one of the establishments in our downtown come before us and ask for the exact same thing, and we have to be prepared to accommodate them. Now, I have already heard from at least a half a dozen of them who have told me they want their, hold on a sec, Duke, they want their 4 spaces too. Now, how am I supposed to do this? A couple months ago, this board decided to deny River Street Tavern 4 parking spaces to accommodate them for outdoor dining, based on the idea that we couldn't sacrifice that many parking spaces. We've got 126 on-street parking spaces. We give them 4, but we give Aliano's 4, we give Cliff Surges 4, we give Anvil Club 4, we give you 4. Pretty soon, we're under 100. Now, we denied that request. Trustee Kunze has in the past, and rightly so, suggested an even-handed application of our ordinances and policies, and to deny the River Street Tavern those 4 spaces, yet to grant them to you is not an even-handed application of that policy.
Okay.
So for you to come here and tell me that you're not being treated fairly when
Not from
there
the
are
board.
very few things in that licensing agreement that you are adhering to, is really disingenuous and pretty unfair on your part.
No, it's not. The board's always been kind to me. I was only talking to you, Jeff.
Yes, I realize.
Question for you guys, and with the parking that the Anvil Club has, that right in front of his place, I've seen his valet guys turn people away that were trying to go into Diamond Gems, trying to go into Calendo's, and say that this parking is only for the Anvil Club. So how does that work?
Yeah, well, there's an agreement there with them. I don't know. We'd have to look into that. But I can
I was
assure you
curious.
that if we go ahead and allow for this, we're going to have to be prepared to have every one of our establishments in the downtown come to us for the exact same request.
For the record, that vote was not unanimous. 2 of us trustees voted yes for River Street to get the parking spots, and I
Doesn't
was
matter.
one of them.
You-
No, I'm
it
saying
doesn't-
I'm consistent.
And that's
I know,
great. And thank
but
you,
you were
Trish.
speaking for me.
No,
but
no,
I was
no.
speaking
I'm
for me.
talking for the board in general. It was a board decision.
Exactly.
So it doesn't have to be unanimous for all of us to take responsibility.
We know this, thank
We
you.
are the board. Whatever the board decides is what the board does. So it doesn't matter as far as
But on this one,
unanimous vote.
it's not a unanimous vote, but I gave my piece because we're not taking away spots that they are already being used and they have been used. The other one, it's apples and oranges on that one. This, they've already been using these. I'm not taking away spots that patrons have been using to park in.
And can I also,
That's different.
can I also bring up the point that that was a request for 4 spots, not 2, in front of one business that has multiple other businesses in the exact same building.
Okay.
I don't know, nobody's come before us and asked for 2 parking spots in the lot.
And we also had
Correct.
safety concerns
said-
from the chief that
Yes.
that was not safe to
We're
see
not-
that's why
people
I
in
said
those
apples and
spots.
Listen, if,
So
you,
this
if
is
you're
not
going
at all
to do
the
this and give
same
direction to
thing
staff
we're
to go
voting
ahead
on.
and craft the new agreement to, it seems like a very malleable thing that we're doing here because whatever it is you decide you want to do, we have to, on the back end, as you mentioned, codify it. It's not really codifying anything, but we're going to go ahead and amend the lease to allow you to do what you're already doing. My thought is be upfront with us. Tell us what you want to do upfront. We'll set up the agreement to accommodate that, and then we'll go from there. But what you do is you go ahead and you make these changes that, in the middle of the night or
That's
whatever,
false, Jeff.
And now we've got to deal with them, and then we end up having to take the complaints for them. And
I have all my emails
you
from
don't
Jennifer
have
Johnson.
to. I do. If
Okay.
I had $1 for every person who's called me moaning and groaning about
Yeah.
those smokers.
Are those your friends?
What's that?
Are those your friends?
No, they're people who are operating in this town. The people who are merchants in the downtown. And if I've had $1 for every complaint I've taken, I'd have a pocket full of dollars.
I have a lot of people that came from the village, and they're also going to email Erica. And as far as the years I've been here, as far as the stuff I've done for the community, so I would just ask you to have those people email them over too. So I'm curious now to see who those people are.
And I would
People are
like to
complaining.
say, this was a board, when this lease was written, it was a board that is not us. And it was actually, you were on the board.
Yeah, and I
At
denied it.
the time,
You don't wanna
weren't.
deny
So
it.
it was a very poorly written lease. And so I'm not gonna blame one person for making a smart business decision for a lease that actually, honestly, the village should have written it better. And then it wasn't enforced for years. Once again, we were not on the board when it wasn't enforced. So that issue does not start with Duke. That issue starts with who was here when it
No,
was written.
It doesn't. It
Sorry,
starts with
that's
the
common
situation
sense.
that we're dealing with now. It has nothing to do with what was done in the past. It has everything. There's nothing in the agreement that we have with Duke and Duke's Barbecue that talks about the use of parking spaces. Nothing. So you're using them to provide the smokers to do a catering business. And our agreement with you, sir, is
don't do
that we
catering
get
out
a
of the
percentage of the money that comes through the
Out of the
window.
window,
But your
correct.
business is set up and supported 100% on catering, which
That is
we
false.
get nothing for. Now,
is false.
I go ahead and I empty your grease trap at the expense of my neighbors. But I don't do that for DC
I don't
Cobb,
use the
and I
grease
don't
trap.
do that for
That grease
River
trap
Street
has-
Tavern.
No. That grease trap has never been touched. The same thing as the grease, as the fryers inside of the caboose that I cleaned out. I don't use grease. And when I do dump the tanks, I put them into jugs and I put them into the garbage can.
Okay.
I don't use that. I don't
Then
use that grease.
you're taking my example too literally, because we're also paying for everything in the operation of that business.
No, you do not. I pay for my own garbage pickup. You don't pay for that, Jeff. So please don't sit up here and tell us.
Right.
I pay for my own electric, my own water.
Erica, do you have direction?
We
don't
did-
start lying.
We did vote on this just recently to extend it to March 4th of 2025. It was originally going to expire. It originally would have expired already. But we extended it to March 4th, 2025. The vote was 5-0, and it was voted for by Jeff Lyman, just so we don't know.
And that's fine.
And so I think, yeah, I would say also, Erica, do you have everything you need to go on? I would say, yeah, let's talk to Duke about his hours and see what really works for him, and we'll see if it works for us.
Aren't those hours already stipulated in the agreement that we're currently operating under?
The hours that started with Lil, when Lil was present, it was that I would be open, that I can choose the hours. The reason why I stopped being open on Monday and Tuesday because I wasn't getting any traffic down there, so that way I was losing money as far as paying employees. Most of my clientele was coming in during the summer times, Thursday through Sunday, which were heavy traffic. So I'm like, I'm not gonna have anybody in the window on a Monday and lose money as far as from paying for wasted food, because I would have food up there. I told Lucy, and I also told the board members present in the previous ones, whenever there's a festival, a town event you guys got going on or anything like that, I'll be present for it. I've even done things when the depot said, hey Duke, can you open up, can you give us gift cards, can you do this? I always say yes to everybody in the community, so please do not make it seem as if I am not open during like certain times where I try not to give to this community or try to paint that picture, Jeff. Because my hours are Thursday through Sunday in the summertime, Friday through Sunday. Once the fall hits, because we lose a lot of traffic from the bike trail, and we lose a lot of traffic because the kids go back to school. So trust me, if I can make a lot of money every day, I think anybody in their right mind would stay open like 7 days a week.
Okay, thank you, Duke. I appreciate your time. Now, I would like to ask the board, what will you do when the other merchants in the downtown come to us and ask us to reserve
I will
parking?
respond to them when they come.
Hang on a second.
Well, use basic logic, because these are
Yeah.
two totally different
Pretty much.
instances.
So
Like,
we're-
we're not giving
No.
spots to people who didn't have them under an agreement with the village in the past.
He didn't have one
He had an
either.
agreement that was not well codified into
Well, we don't-
a contract, but you voted for it, and then you voted for it again in 2020.
But I didn't vote for it.
And you could have said, no, we never agreed to this. Why is he smoking in these parking lots?
No.
But
Andy,
he's
they're
been
all
using
upstairs.
it, and no one's complained until just now, as we have a parking problem.
You need to-
And
you
we're
need to
honoring.
be careful there. The complaints
Well,
have
you've
been
been
coming in
complaining for a
hold on.
while.
No,
But
not
these
just
just come up
We
right
hear a
now.
lot about these complaints.
Not me.
We don't get the complaints. We
Well,
just hear
you're
from
lucky
you.
because
The
I'm
email is
getting-
open.
Well, tell them to call.
Hey, I tell them.
Everybody that's listening right now, my phone number is
Well, obviously it's not
224-587-9189.
And that's
Give me a
fine.
call.
Okay,
Thanks.
I don't want.
And I would also
this to
like to
go
say for the record,
too far into the weeds here, but
Jeff has never really been welcoming to me nor my business and to this town.
I'm not willing to spend my neighbor's money to.
From the
we're
time,
not restaurateurs.
from the
Duke,
time you were a
you know?
trustee to now, when I threw my first Blues Fest in 2018, the word out of his mouth when I came against the board to speak about it was, I don't know how Tom's going to feel about that. Those were your exact words.
What?
When everybody voted yes for my
I
Blues
heard
Fest in
what you said,
2000,
I just don't understand it.
in 2018, everybody voted for my Blues Festival to be okay to host it in that back parking lot. Your exact
Mm-hmm.
words were, "I say no," or whatever you say, because I do not know how Tom is going to feel about
And
that.
You
voted no.
Thanks.
Yes, you do. Whenever I'm doing something
Blues
for the
Fest
town,
this year was held in Carpentersville Park.
that is correct, because
Yeah.
of you, Jeff. Whenever I'm trying to do
Okay.
something for this town, you mimic and try to go around different businesses. I have several business owners. You want to talk about people coming out that come up to me. I didn't want to bring them up in here because I didn't want to turn into something that it shouldn't be turned into. But several business owners come to me and say, "Hey, why does Jeff have it out for you?" Jeff comes in here. He
Jeff
said this
doesn't
about
have it out for
you.
you,
Yeah,
dude.
you do, man.
Oh.
With the health department, there was a false claim. The health department came out 2 weeks ago, a false claim that was made from a private number or whatever that said I did not have running water inside of my caboose during the summertime, and said that my freezers were out, and they didn't know where it came from. And then all of a sudden I get a letter saying that, what are you using for your commissary for the wintertime inside Kane County? And then I fill out the letter to use the kitchen at Eliano's and also at Eastside Cafe. And let's just say that some business owners came and said that they received phone calls from none other than you, Jeff, saying, "Why are you letting Duke use your kitchen?"
When I read that letter, I didn't ask them why they were letting you use
Okay,
their
well,
kitchen.
I'm
I
just
asked them
saying-
if they were letting
Okay,
you use
all
their
right, there you
kitchen.
go.
There's a big difference.
I know.
I wanted more clarity on that email that came through
I bet
from
you
the
did.
Department of Health, and I got some clarity on it, Duke. And if
I
you
bet
want to
you
be
did.
honest about it,
Yeah, no.
I proved everything that you told those individuals from the health department wrong. Because what you told them was not the truth. At least from the information that I was able to gather
Jeff, you're making up
from
stuff,
what
man.
you told me.
If I told them it wasn't the truth,
what
I would
you
have
had
been
indicated.
If I told them it wasn't the truth, I would have been shut down
If it
by
was
the health department.
unfounded.
Yeah. So that doesn't make any sense.
One of the biggest examples that the health department said.
Correct. So you can call William, you call Adam on the health department. They actually used me as an example for the rest of the people in Kane County.
I think we have enough information to proceed.
I think so
you
too.
Yeah. So,
Thank you, Duke.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Duke.
Okay, that'll take us to item A, our riverfront master plan discussion.
Good evening. So here with us this evening is Lacey Lawrence. She's a senior associate with the Hitchcock Design Group, and she's going to give a little update on where we are, where they are with the Riverfront Master Plan. We've got several months under our belt, so to speak, and she'll take it over and give a little update on kind of where things are.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
Not a problem. All right, so thanks for having me. As Phil said, we're going to go through the highlights of what we've been working on for the past few months. So we'll evaluate or review the analyze phase, essentially the site assessments that we've completed. Connect phase was community engagement, and then envision is we're halfway through, about or 2/3 through envision, which is developing the framework and alternative plan. So just to refresh, the red kind of box up there represents the planning area for the Riverfront Master Plan. So all the way along the river from the north municipal boundary to the south municipal boundary. And then we kind of extended a little bit further east, just mainly because we want to be able to establish some connections from the riverfront development plan into the downtown, to the bike trail, and other community destinations as well, to bring people to and from the riverfront. So as mentioned, analyze is really about assessing the current conditions as they exist out there today. So we did a site visit and walked the entire corridor, and we noted several different environmental constraints that were shown here. So you can see like the blue area, the area of floodway. We also have significant area of 100-year and 500-year floodplains, so the dash purple and orange that kind of extend almost into several streets deep east of the river. And there's also a few tributaries that run from east into west that outlet into the Fox River. So there's some that's like no-name tributary that's kind of in the middle, and another tributary further to the south. And then we also noted here like the historic district, the TIF district as well as other parks that are owned and managed by the Township Park District. So again, to note significant areas of floodway and floodplain. We also reviewed dams. There are some upstream and downstream dams with Carpentersville and Elgin, but with assessing those, we feel that those would have zero impact on our study area if for any reason that they are removed in the future. We also evaluated jurisdictional constraints for anything that we might propose along the riverfront corridor. Obviously, it would involve Army Corps and IDNR and Fish and Wildlife Service and all of those. So we did pull together, an in-depth memo assessing all these site conditions. So if you want to review it, other things to note was we evaluated, or not we, I should say, KOLA. The village hired KOLA to do a traffic study through around Water Street and through downtown. And basically what we have learned from that is the primary truck routes, because part of our master plan is to assess and consider vehicular circulation and pedestrian circulation for improved safety and enjoyability of the riverfront. And so I'll kind of review some of those truck routes when we get to the framework plan in the presentation. So any questions on analyze? Then we went into the Connect phase, which was the public engagement phase of the planning effort. So we did an online survey as well as more small group stakeholder focus groups. So we had more one-on-one dialogue with those individuals. And then we will also, following the Envision phase, have another community open house where we'll show the plan to the community and get feedback on the specific plan. So some high-level outcomes of Connect. Most of that influenced the strategies memo. I think that was included for everybody, the strategies memo. If not, I can review that in high level. It goes through the goals and objectives that are established for the Riverfront Master Plan, as well as desired program amenities that we heard from online surveys, as well as stakeholders plus staff. And so those will be represented in the framework plans that we're going to go through. But if I could go through them in high level, a lot of the feedback we received, the intent of the master plan they would like to see is to build on the natural beauty of the Fox River, enhance some of the environmental aspects of the river and its watershed, expand recreation opportunities, both passive and active, both land-based, water-based, and water-adjacent, improve connectivity from the riverfront and to downtown and other key destinations, consider future acquisitions of key sites along the river, evaluate opportunities for pedestrian and vehicular calming and circulation, establish a unique riverfront identity or brand that's unique to the village of East Dundee, and to consider hosting additional special events along the riverfront. So those are some of the goals and objectives that were developed in combination with some of the community feedback. And then more specifically, some of the desired program amenities were native landscaping and shoreline restoration, ornamental landscaping and beautification, removal of invasive and non-native species, adding some additional seating along the riverfront, as well as gathering spaces with picnic benches, trash cans, bike racks, etc. Provide better riverbank access, both river and water access, so river adjacent plus actually getting down and into the water. Improving the walking path, potentially considering pathway lighting that would be unobtrusive. Improve pedestrian safety, especially on Water Street, with wider pathways, additional buffers from Water Street, as well as providing safe pedestrian crossing of Water Street. We also heard providing another pedestrian crossing of the river south of Main Street, as well as considering activation of the Hager property and how we might plan for that connection with the riverfront, and consider additional land acquisition. So those are the primary objectives that we heard through these two different phases. And so that kind of leads us into the Envision. This is really our framework before we kind of dig into more detailed master plan design. So this is kind of the high level that will help set us up for that next phase of design. Let's see if you can see my mouse. All right. So some of the key things I want to share with you is just some of the overall objectives that we're going to implement. So we'll move kind of north to south. So this is Water Street, you can see up here, and then this is the north boundary that transitioned into Carpentersville. So Carpentersville already has some riverfront improvements kind of north of the street here. And we did, as part of those stakeholder interviews, we met with Village Carpentersville as well as West Dundee to hear about what they're planning, because they are actually doing some future improvements to the riverfront and how we might build upon those or complement those with our development, our plan. The other thing to talk about here is the primary truck routes. So from the KOLA study, obviously Main Street is an IDOT Class 2 roadway, and so our improvements are not going to be suggesting any major modifications to the roadway that would then involve IDOT. But other secondary, like minor and major roadways are Barrington. So there are some downtown industrial sites that do use Barrington, that they will travel from here and go east, or travel Barrington and then head north on Water Street. And then they'll also use the northwest corridor of Van Buren Street. And so that also kind of sets us up for what we might propose on Water Street. So going north, we know that we need to keep a certain roadway width in order to facilitate vehicular truck traffic in that way. But we are trying to look to do some sort of like road diet in that area that would still allow ample cross-section, but be able to regain some of the roadway width for more pedestrian space to the west. So in that area is going to be a smaller bike trail or bike path, walking path, because there is very minimal land area there adjacent to the river that we can really build significant improvements in there. So this will primarily be matching kind of Carpentersville trail width down Water Street, regain some more space for pedestrian safety and buffer from Water Street. And then the bigger change comes at this park here. So this is Williams Bartles Park. And so part of the proposal is to, as part of the traffic calming measures, would be to reroute traffic around Bartles Park and to connect the park to the river by taking out this section of the roadway here. So that's kind of one traffic calming measure, is to reroute the traffic that way. This also creates like a nice connectivity to the river, opens it up so we can bring pathways down closer to the water, maybe have some open air shelters and have other activities and iconic branding or gateway opportunities in here as well. Okay, something else I forgot to mention on Water Street is potentially doing some sort of like speed tables, or that would also kind of slow traffic down for key pedestrian crossing areas. So that might be one at Michigan, maybe one at North, and then we have this rerouting around the park here. And then moving south, so this section in green, it's kind of hard to see, that's on Water Street. Since there's limited truck traffic in here and limited volumes of traffic in this area, we'd be looking to maybe transition this section of the street that's close to downtown into somewhat of like a festival street. So potentially using like pavers, and then kind of reducing the lane width a little bit. If anybody's been like to Batavia, like River Street or other communities where it's still a roadway and can be used, but also has pavers that kind of slows down traffic and has a lot more pedestrian spaces. So that's something we would end up considering in this section here. And then as we move further south, we get to the Hager property. And so this is a parcel that we're identifying for a redevelopment area. And so this could be, a significant community space. Some considerations that we are looking at would be potentially closing off River Street through the development area to really connect this land with the riverfront area, or potentially closing off the east-west street just north of it, just to try to see how we can really combine those key spaces and create a really destination community space here. The last kind of key element to the framework plan is that secondary pedestrian river crossing that would be here. So it would be in conjunction with the redevelopment of the Hager property and tie into the park on the west side of the river, which is Aldous Park. Yes?
Isn't there already a pedestrian crossing that ties into South End Park?
Yeah, it's a wooden footbridge that goes across.
Yes,
Further
talked about
It's
adding,
further down.
essentially a third pedestrian crossing.
Yeah.
Actually,
Okay.
This
or
is,
if you include the 72 bridge.
yeah, so there's a pedestrian crossing here.
Yes.
There's obviously a pedestrian crossing, which is the Main Street Road Bridge. And then this would be a third bridge, and there is another one further south. This is basically the halfway point between Main Street and then the south pedestrian bridge.
I suppose I just don't have the perspective on the map.
Yeah, the
then,
scale.
Because it feels like it's about this far away from the one that's further south.
It's
Right.
just south of the Public Works garage. Not
Correct,
very-
yep.
It's a wooden bridge that goes across, not very much further south.
Just north of the Richardson subdivision.
Correct.
Between that and wastewater. Yes,
Right.
correct.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure, was this the same thing, or how
No,
close
yeah,
was it?
absolutely. Thanks for that question. And then other things would just be, again, trying to connect the Fox River Trail into downtown or into the riverfront. So we have some key areas where we would propose some on-street bike lane connections that would bring bicyclists from the trail over to the Riverwalk in that area. And obviously they can come over on just north of Main if we did a kind of a festival street in there.
Would those be signed?
Yeah, they would be
as
striped.
Preferred bike paths? Okay.
And again, this is really just a high-level framework, and then we'll use this to actually do a more detailed design of all of these key areas that we'll bring to one of the next meetings.
I like the proposals to slow down traffic on water without actually closing it and route it around the park.
I should also mention that the truck traffic study that Lacey mentioned, KLOA report, we're going to planning to bring that to you all for a more comprehensive discussion at some point in the future.
I've got a couple questions if we're like to that stage
Yes.
here.
Yep.
Obviously, there's a lot of potential from one end in the north to the furthest south, but in the work that I've done on it, have you guys talked at all or considered at all the Army Corps for flood abatement? Because that's a big issue. I mean, I don't want to see us spending hundreds of thousands of dollars fixing it up, making it look really nice and pretty, and then that 500-year flood comes next week and it's all underwater.
Right.
We've already had some significant flooding back in 07, I believe it was, maybe 08. And the entire southern portion from 72 all the way down to just about Richardson, all the way nearly to River Street, South River Street was underwater.
Yeah, based on these lines, this is what would flood.
And so if on the west side of the river, they've got a high enough, a steep enough embankment along the edge of the river where they can hold it back. I'm wondering what can be done on our side to mimic that. I'm thinking perhaps a 4 to 5 foot wall of some sort. You can skin it in rock to make it look a little more natural, but then backfill it and then put in your river walk, because the river walk, while it's a great idea, if it's going to be underwater every other year or every 3 or 4 years like it is now, it's going to become more of a maintenance issue for us than anything else.
Well, you mean on the north side or the south side?
On the south, but we have had flooding on the north as well.
I will say that the West Dundee Riverwalk is underwater.
Yes.
Seems like
On the
half
north
year.
side, where they have those, where they have
Yeah, for
those
sure. I was just
low-
thinking, like, I live on the north side of 72, and I
Right.
have in the last 17 years, as of last Friday,
Seen it quite
we
a
haven't
bit.
seen water jump the riverbank once. So that's like, we get water, but it comes up from the ground. It does not come over from the river.
Yeah.
President, if I can add something to that. Tonight, tomorrow night, Wednesday night, the Army Corps is hosting 3 public hearings essentially.
Yeah, I saw that.
To discuss.
Yeah, they changed the time on the one date too. I think it's in Elgin.
So WBK Engineering, one of the
Our
consulting
partners.
firms associated with this study, will be attending one of them to incorporate any information.
Yeah. And do you know the dates of them right now? I mean, because there wasn't tonight, tomorrow, and Wednesday. Okay.
Tonight was in St. Charles, tomorrow Elgin,
And
Wednesday is Aurora.
Okay. Yeah, it would be interesting to hear, we can't really do anything without their blessing, obviously. So, but I think it's critical. The one idea that I had a while back was to take all of Triangle Park, Bartles Park in this instance. We, as Sarah had mentioned, we have issues with the truck traffic. We've had a number of complaints, both with speed along Water Street and with trucks that shouldn't be going that route. If we were to look to close off Water Street through that portion of Triangle Park there, and incorporate the entire park all the way to the water's edge, that on a much smaller scale would give us a waterfront destination, if you will, close enough to the downtown that we can try and tie it in. And my thought is that to do this entire thing, is a decades-long plan.
Multi-phased,
And, yes, and it would have to be in stages. But that, I think, would be a worthwhile one to explore, simply because we eliminate the truck trafficking, because they're not going to want to have to go around Bartles Park in this instance to continue on south on Water. They're not going to be able to go through the downtown, which we can police, of course, as we choose. And it, of course, will give us more land, if you will, in front of the park, or in front of the river, to take advantage of the riverfront. So it's something we can consider, because it actually kills a couple of birds with that one stone.
Yeah, and except it does still take trucks through downtown.
It can if we allow it, but I think what it does is it complicates it more if we were to close off water at that point. Now, you can still go around the park. You know, if you're just a normal, a car going around it, there's still not going to be any issue with that. You certainly have to go much slower, which is what we would prefer. But it's much more difficult for an 18-wheeler to go and navigate that than it would be for cars. So, have you checked with West Dundee and their plans, because they've talked about the bridge as well? So,
yes, we did talk with West Dundee.
And what was their take? Because I've talked to Chris on this one a little bit and got some information.
Yeah, we met with various stakeholders, and they did have differing opinions on what should be implemented there.
There's no consensus.
Right. Obviously, Fox River Study Group and Friends of the Fox, they really appreciated obviously the natural implementation along the riverfront. West Dundee was very much in favor of more infrastructure along the riverfront, with the same concern that you had mentioned, that obviously most of the pathways, the idea would be to have a lower pathway and an upper pathway, knowing that obviously we want to get down as close to the river as we can. That's where most of the experience and appreciation for nature would happen. But then it is going to be subject to flooding and changing waters, and it might be closed periodically. And so as long as we have a higher path that can also bypass it in those flood events, is ideal.
Okay, and then has the study that you've done on the south end of 72 taken into account at all the need for a one in and one out at South River Street? Because currently it's a one-way south. That, I think this town really needs to concentrate on from a future perspective, to accommodate a one in and one out at South River as well as Van Buren. To eliminate that, or not to consider it up front, is a cart before the horse, simply because if we were going to go ahead and develop along the park, or along the river to whatever result, it's going to cause a massive gridlock. Now, any development on the Hager property has to be considered as well with the riverfront.
Right.
But we need to have some infrastructure changes in there, some absolutes. You can't, all you got to do is Sunday morning wait till Emmanuel Lutheran lets out at 10:30 and see what kind of headache it creates at Van Buren. Imagine that every day, twice a day.
Right.
Because that's what, and if we were to add another 100 or 120 cars because of whatever we do to Hager, it's going to cause a big problem. So that has to be considered up front.
We would definitely recommend a traffic study with that development to determine
Joe, we've had
the various scenarios and what might be in the impact.
Yeah, some conversations about what some of the limitations are, or restrictions or challenges at that intersection of River and 72. It's a jogged intersection that creates a problem when you're heading south.
Right.
It needs to be widened. There's very few alternatives on how to go about doing that. So I don't know if that really has been part of your focus on this, but
yeah, and this plan was trying to push more, since Van Buren is a more heavily trafficked road, to try to push more of the traffic there, because you're right, River Street is so narrow, it's almost like a utility street. It's very, very narrow in that area. And so the primary traffic who's just looking to bypass or come in and out of the development, obviously whoever you get as a developer will have their own proposal as far as the building massings and how to lay out the site. Our main intention was just to recommend a few different things, and with the intent that we feel like connecting those two parcels rather than bisecting it with a major road would really allow you to take advantage of that riverfront, and the business take advantage of the position adjacent to the river, than putting a major thoroughfare dividing both parcels.
Yeah, to be able to take advantage of any changes or improvements to the riverfront, you got to be able to get to it.
Yes.
So really, the traffic and the traffic ways, I should say, the roadways have to be able to accommodate it.
Yeah.
And what we're looking at is some surgery when it comes to that. So I also have considered, and I've suggested too, perhaps an extension of Johnson Street to the east, to curve up through the D'Angelo property to connect up with 72 up by Linden. That may be possible, it may not, I don't know, but we need to consider that as a possibility as well to alleviate some of the congestion that we're likely to have at Van Buren. So these are things that are great to consider, but we need to make sure that we don't create rework for ourselves by getting ahead of ourselves. That's all. So, but I like what we're looking at.
Is this slide available?
Say it again, sorry.
Is this slide available to be?
The slides?
This,
It's
yeah.
on the website.
Oh, okay.
Next to where the agenda is posted.
Ah, that I did not get.
Yeah, the colors might show up a little bit.
That makes me feel slightly better.
You didn't miss it.
It's not in the packet, it's on the meeting page.
Okay,
It just says presentation.
We didn't have it in time for the packet.
perfect. I'm not losing my mind for once. This is very exciting.
Can you talk a little more about the North Street bike connector, and is that intended to also be pedestrian? Or I know that if you go north on the trail, you'll hit the, like in Carpentersville, you'll kind of meet up with it. But is that trying to pull the downtown closer to the trail and giving like an artery in the middle over to it?
Yeah, I was trying to kind of connect this park as well as maybe the gateway into connecting into the Riverfront Trail. So it would be like an on-street bike lane that would just be striped. So pedestrians obviously could still use the sidewalk to walk from this park over to the riverfront. And then bikes would take the on-street bike lane over. So there's multiple opportunities to bring people from the bike lane into the riverfront. And obviously once we get down to Hager, the two end up like merging. And so we do have a few different recommendations for having a riverfront walkway and like a shared bike lane, or options to have them separated and still flow through the space. So obviously bike trails, you want to go fast, you don't want any sharp turns. People are trying to go quickly on the bike trail versus the riverfront. We really want to focus on pedestrian activity and try to keep people want to take bikes, like to walk the bikes rather than to drive on it, because there's not going to be adequate lane width to be able to accommodate 2-lane bikes plus pedestrians like along the riverfront. It's just going to be a different identity for the riverfront
Would
than
there be
the bike trail.
almost an option to branch off of the bike trail, a secondary trail that goes down by the river and then come back onto the trail afterwards? Is that something that, have you talked to the park district or the Forest Preserve that manages that bike trail about those kind of options?
We haven't talked with the Forest Preserve at all, no. But that's something we could discuss. And I think this is not owned by the park district.
No, that's owned by the fire. Well, it's not owned by the fire department. It's,
Volunteer fire.
Yeah, fire brigade or something. Yeah. We're actually, I have talked to them, and they are willing to talk to us about the village acquiring that park. So it could be a possibility.
Yeah.
They are talking to. They're trying to find the documents where it was given to them to see if there's like a timeline of they have to keep it for so many years. They didn't know. So, and the last time I was at the Quadcom meeting, the fire chief wasn't there, so I didn't get the chance to talk to him about that. So anyways.
Yeah, so this one's probably the most direct connection, but this technically, I think that road is Carpentersville. I don't think that one is the village. And so we're
option two is that if Water Street remains north of, let's say North Street remains a 2-lane road, you can dedicate a bike lane along Water Street and then keep a path along the river more for slower walking pedestrians, runners, walkers, and then a bike lane along the Water Street as well. So
Yeah.
obviously a mix of ideas that can be incorporated.
That is kind of how it's used right now. Is the bikers usually when you get to the downtown, there's so many people that you can't bike through it very easily. So people turn at where the mural is, or by Dairy Queen. They cut over to Water Street, and then they go up to where it connects in Carpentersville, and that's kind of the fast bike route. And then people on the trail in our downtown are the kind of wandering around, or mostly walkers, because it's just packed with walkers, and you feel rude telling everyone on your left the whole way through. So it would be nice if there was, like on Water Street, some kind of fast lane, or even if it was bike lanes like 3rd Street along the Fox River Trail, because I think bikers will go around into the neighborhoods somewhere just to not be
Yeah.
stuck in traffic.
It would be great if it was dedicated. And
Yeah.
it would make me feel slightly less twitchy every time I see bikers speeding down, because that is, people go fast on Water Street. They shouldn't, but they do.
Yeah.
And so, if we have the slow down mechanisms and we can deal with the traffic, I think it would be good too to have that dedicated bike
Yeah,
space
like
as
a
well.
protected bike lane.
Yep.
I think drivers prefer that as well.
Yeah.
Joe, can I ask you, do you think that there would be any possibility at any point on the north side anyway, where we could, I don't know how you phrase it, reclaim portion of, or widen the land, the available land between the road and the water line? So in other words, maybe to extend it out somehow. I know we'd have to get Army Corps approval to do it. I'm not suggesting that we do it for the entire length of Dundee, but for a portion of it, could we maybe build out a bit? I don't know if it would be a pier option or a wall perhaps that could be backfilled and then cut back into the shoreline so as to kind of jaunt out a bit and then come back in, backfill that, and so for a portion of it, however long we would decide, we could essentially widen the use of the land between the roadway and the water line. Do you think that's nuts?
No, you could definitely do that, but you would have to compensate for any fill within the floodplain. So that pipe or that path would essentially be lower in the floodplain, so you would have to expect that to flood.
Well, and that's why I'm wondering how high we'd have to go, plus to the idea of how long it would be before it would be buildable. There's going to be settling issues anytime you're going to add on. I mean, Mr. Palumbo could attest to that. But, if we were to take on something like that, I mean, is it years down the road before it could be usable? Or, I know those are all rhetorical at this point, but certainly worth exploring because we could get a lot more out of our waterfront that way. The
Right.
riverfront would be,
Another opportunity, obviously, obviously it's floodplain and floodway, you have to, whatever you fill, you have to excavate to compensate, so take out area somewhere else. Since you do have significant floodway, there is other opportunities, maybe if that might flood currently for acquisition, that you could then create some more comp storage like along the river. You'd have to find opportunities for additional land acquisition, maybe to carve out some additional
space. So we'd
space.
have to dredge out something further downriver, you're saying?
Yeah, you'd have to cut. Like if you're filling in some area, you'd have to find an opportunity to cut. Like this, you have more land, or a Hager property, you'd have to cut and grade the banks back further, and lose land there to gain land somewhere else. Because it has to be you have to end up with a net cut.
Yeah.
And so that's something considering as well. If there's FEMA land acquisition opportunities for lands that frequently flood that you can acquire to potentially. You can't put any buildings back, 'cause that's the reason why they would be considered for acquisition. But it would be a way to grade some additional comp storage to offset any key areas that you do feel like would be valuable to have that additional land.
And has any part of your study included grant possibilities from the government entities that would help with
Yes.
this sort of thing? Okay.
Yep. So after we developed the comprehensive plan in detail, we'll go out to the community as well. So we'll come back to the board first to get feedback, and then we'll do a community open house to get their feedback, and then we'll develop an action plan to break the overall plan into pieces that are attainable for the next 5 years. And then part of that will also identifying grant opportunities that could provide matching funds for various projects. Obviously, there's IDNR, OSLAD, recreation, there's FEMA, land acquisition, so there's IDNR boat launch, there's, we did hear wanting an accessible kayak and canoe launch within the stretch, because I know Carpentersville has one just north up here of the property boundary, but it's not an accessible, it's not wheelchair accessible. So that's something we heard from the community, that they'd like to see some sort of wheelchair accessible launch option. So there could be grant opportunities for that as well.
Do we know when and not to get off the subject, when the dam in Carpentersville is coming down? It was supposed to come down this year, but I hadn't heard.
They've, I think, moved it to 2024.
Okay, is that the county that's discontinuing to do that, or is that the Army Corps?
I believe it's the Army Corps. The Fox River Study Group has been providing updates on that.
Okay.
I think they have an update from.
The next one north is what? Algonquin, just north of Algonquin, is it? Or, and then the next one south would be Elgin.
Elgin,
So that's a nice stretch of the river that could be used for recreation purposes. East Dundee is right in the center of it. So that would be awesome if we could take advantage of this. Of course, all it takes is money.
All right. Any other questions?
Anything else? No?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, then, oh, yeah, lights. Thank you.
It's like magic.
All right, so this is going to take us to item C then, is the next on the agenda. If we could have a motion.
I'll move to approve an ordinance granting a special use permit for a motor vehicle dealer used only for the property located at 455 East Main Street in the B2 Community Business District.
Second.
Discussion?
So, planning and zoning did not agree with this usage, right?
Correct.
Because of the comprehensive plan, which is extremely out of date and needs to be fixed. But can staff kind of give us a little bit of, like, you guys obviously still put it in here to, well, like, with some conditions, planning and zoning disagreed, like, where are we at with the balance on that?
So just a slight recap of P&Z. They want to, going forward, when the comp plan is updated in 2024, identify Route 25 as the location where used car dealerships would be most appropriate, and then remove 72 as a place where they would be allowed, so that we would have this car corridor, as it may be. So that was their rationale for sort of saying they didn't want to provide a positive recommendation to the board. Staff provided multiple conditions because there was input from the fire district and other entities who had concerns, but we didn't actually, did we put a recommendation in? I don't remember.
Denial.
Yeah, so we did put in a recommendation to deny. But as a process, it is required to come before the board. It went through P&Z, and now it's before the board. You can decide if you want to move it forward or to not move it forward.
Thank you.
Any questions or
Well,
discussion?
yeah, I mean,
Is it possible just to make a quick comment? Just
Sure.
Because I spoke earlier and kind of had a big time gap.
Yeah, thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah, it's not a problem. So just to let you know a little bit about myself, I have a master's degree in geophysics. I was working down at Chevron for a few years, got laid off, and I moved back here and kind of going into the family business. And so, just kind of using this as an opportunity for myself to make a job for myself and support my family. Now, in looking at that current area, there's a couple of parcels that are empty land. And, we've been in this area for over 20 years, and those parcels have just sat empty, okay? And even one of them right next to Main Street Motors, I think that one was for sale for quite a while, and I think the village of East Dundee actually ended up buying it. So, from our perspectives, being residents of this area, we would not like to see another empty parcel of land. or another empty building. And, when we initially first had this meeting, there was a discussion, as if that was going to be the walkable area. And to me personally, being kind of a resident of this community, I do not see that as a walkable area at all. As you said, the current vision of that walkable area is no longer, on that 72 corridor. If anything, it has transitioned to along the riverfront. So, from my perspective, it's like, would we like to see another business there that would support the community and provide revenue for the community, or do we want to see another empty parcel? And so, me personally, I have some bias towards it, because, I want it to happen, but, I also have a bias for my community as well, and I don't want another piece of empty land right there or a vacant building that nobody uses. I want to see jobs for myself and other people. So, I would love your guys' consideration for that to happen. And we are not going in there, to provide, another shicey business or anything like that. We plan to run a good business with a good inventory of cars, give a good image to East Dundee, and bring in people. When our customers come in, our customers are going to support these surrounding businesses in the community. Also, we already have been in business along the 25 corridor for 6 years. We are leasing a property there known as Economy Plus Auto Sales. If you look at our Google reviews, we have a 4.5-star rating. We sell 20 cars per month, and we make our customers happy. So this is an opportunity to not just bring another business to East Dundee. This is an opportunity to bring a business that's going to be there for the long term and provide a quality product to people, and bring in additional people to the community. And also, to add on that, there are 2 body shops adjacent to that property, so it's conforming to what's already there. And I don't see it as being feasible to have those body shops leave anytime soon. Also, there is another gas station there. So I don't think that there's really many other good uses for the property, given that they're next to body shops and next to a gas station. So I would hope that you guys really take that into consideration, and really, think about, why this is a good opportunity for that to happen. So with that, I'd like to end there, and if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Do you guys have any questions for me at all?
Wait, I did have a question for you. You said you have a business now that's on Route 25, and,
yeah.
and this is going to be a second business, or are you moving?
No, well, so we don't own the property, and we actually plan on vacating there just because, it got bought out by a trucking company, and they plan on turning it into like a big trucking complex. And so they plan on eventually getting rid of us. It's Global Trucking or Globe Trucking. So they bought that whole parcel, and they actually lease a portion of it. But we do plan on leaving there. And this is kind of really, when we looked at this property, we looked at the zoning, we read the zoning laws for East Dundee, and, we didn't just come in here to kind of go against what the vision is. We came in here trying to do something that coincides with the zoning laws already in place, and that's why we thought we had a good shot at making this happen, because we're not really trying to change anything. We're just trying to go with what the plan already is, and quite frankly, I don't really see anything else going there, especially an apartment building or anything like that, because it's really not conducive to an apartment living, given that it's next to a body shop. And then a dealer is a very good business to have there in relation to some other kinds of businesses, just because the hours are friendly to the surrounding neighborhood. And in addition, it's not like a vape shop, it's not a liquor store, it's not anything that's going to bring, the customers that you don't want around residential areas.
Thank you. Just to let
we're out of time.
Yes, we are. We've already heard from you. I mean, quickly.
In addition, what my son said, I'm in multiple, kind of business, like food, car sales, furniture, convenient liquor store, gas stations. Why I chose this specific, field? The reason for that health corner, it's a busy area, and I go past it almost every day. Every day. I see the traffic around the peak hours. For me to establish, to go to the zoning and say I want a liquor store there, I want a gas station. There is many of them, number one. Number two, an easy day, we get 500 to 700 customers in my other liquor stores a day, 500 transaction to 700 transaction a day. With this business, it's less hours, okay? Less customers, we get 2-3 customers a day. We lucky if we can wrap up one deal. So the hours friendly, and we not preventing the walkable area if it's gonna happen in the future. We're gonna fix the lot, we're gonna plant some flowers, we're gonna make it look good. So we're gonna work with the city to make it a better place, like I said, to live in the community and to do business in it. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to let the board know, in addition to planning and zoning's denial of the request and staff's denial of the request, there is another projected use for it, which is another operation would like to come in and open up a, no, please sit.
Well, he's the business owner's son, so.
I'm in the middle of speaking, so.
That's not effectively true. So we do have our realtor here as well. And I do want to say that in the state of the market as it is, my dad had a healthcare business in that location for 12 plus years. I think there was some indication that another healthcare business that's not a health system or an academic health center might be interested in going into that area. I have a background in health systems management from Rush University. I've been a state and local government consultant with the city of Chicago for 3 years. I've worked on the ARPA initiatives with Tony Pretwinkle, and the one thing I've noticed is that there's a huge trend in academic health systems monopolizing smaller healthcare entities, as what happened to my father. And so if there are kind of other uses for this area in the medical realm, I think just given the nature of where it is and the nature of the practice and the nature of healthcare as it is today, I won't see a sustainable small practice there, because my dad tried to do that. He did it for 12 years. COVID hit, and it took 1 year to kind of erase that all away. So if there are different use cases here that have proof of funding and are able to be funded, I think that we haven't been acknowledged of that, and especially in the medical sense, if it is a small practice, and that's kind of the one sense that we had. It wasn't a viable product. My dad was able to provide for the community. He was able to provide over 27,000 patient visits in just this zip code. And so I think just given the nature of his business and any new business that doesn't even have approval from a bank, I would never see that kind of, in my professional opinion, lasting and outstanding kind of a business that's already been standing, that has a track record of showing income. But that's all I would like to add to that. I do think if there is another seller, or excuse me, another interested buyer, they haven't approached our realtor.
Right, and that is, from what I was told, is happening. So within the next couple of days, we're going to be.
It's not true, actually.
I don't want to turn this into a debate, so please sit down. We've already had.
This is my mom. Because this is Vilasini Ramanam, I'm one of the owners of 445 East Main Street, and I want to really plead to this board advise people here. My husband is sick, and so am I. And we have got a person who's ready to buy, and we are not going into a hypothesis that somebody is going to buy. Right now, we have a realtor, and I really am requesting the board to grant this. We are just trying to change. It's a permit because we have health, we have financial constraints. We kept working in this community, helping the community during COVID. We kept all the staff without letting even one single person lose their jobs because we had single moms sitting there. We went into a personal reserves, line of credit. We have a debt which we need to pay. And if there is no income and a debt on our head, and then there's somebody really trying to bring up this community and trying to help there, I think the board should really consider. This is a plea coming from the owner, from my husband who's really helped this community during COVID. We kept our doors open, putting his life at risk, and now he's at a stage which he cannot even work. We have no revenue coming, there is no income, and we have this property which we have to get, because we have a line of credit trying to keep our staff. We didn't let go even one staff during COVID. We took risk of our own health. He's a diabetic, he was there taking care of those patients there. And now I really request this board to, because we did help this community. And we cannot go and Mr. Lyman on some speculations that somebody is interested. We have a realtor here, we have no other offers right now. It's never brought up to this. I don't know what the internal discussion is. And
I understand your position.
Conflict of interest, if you're saying that somebody's there.
I understand your position.
Mr. Mayor, if you have somebody interested, I buy it and invest in it, and if you guarantee the tenant.
Because this is a
I'll buy it, still buy it.
I am just trying
It's
to.
just rumor say it doesn't work.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You've
because
had
we
your
are
say.
owners, and as an owner, if there is no other, even offer,
right,
how can you tell us?
I know. What I'm
this
trying.
is a conflict of interest.
Please.
I'm sorry about that, because I know my husband is not well, and we cannot go, there's a lot of, mental torture going on and financial hardships we are facing.
Right.
So I really would request.
All I'm trying to do is explain to the board that in addition to the denials, there's been information that has been brought to me that there is another interested owner or interested buyer in this property that would like to continue it in the type of business that it has been to this point.
So I will say one thing.
So please
I
consider
am not going to make any vote on speculation. I will not. It's inappropriate. It's not what's before us. What's before us is whether or not this land use is appropriate for a motor vehicle dealer. That's the only thing we're here to consider. I'm not considering the possible maybe of some other property. I'm considering whether or not this property is correct for motor vehicle business, and that has been denied by our Planning and Zoning Commission. It is against our comprehensive plan, and it's against staff recommendations. That's where I'm thinking.
Okay,
speculation is invalid before this board.
That's fine. So do we have any other comments? Do we want to?
I guess I do feel like I understand that what you're saying, that there's these other body shops right next to there, but I mean, those body shops, if anything, I would say I think that the board would like for those body shops to relocate. I mean, we aren't trying to emulate more of that, I think. Or at least, I shouldn't say the board, but from my point of view, I don't think that that's what we want in that land area personally.
The one other thing I'd add too is that the practice was a medical practice, and the medical practice wasn't obviously paying any sales tax because of the nature of the business. And in terms of this new business that's being proposed, the sales tax is obviously going to be in play. I did some comps into similar businesses. It's about 2 to 4 million in approximate revenue. And that's about $140,000 to $280,000 of additional tax revenue that the village would be recognizing in accepting a business like this as opposed to medical practice.
In addition, medical facilities require state-of-the-art buildings, and that is not a state-of-the-art building. And so when you're talking for another medical establishment to come in, they're not going to come in there because that's not within you know, the times of what a medical establishment should be. So I think you know, that to say that another medical facility is going to come in there,
And I really am not.
is a lot of false hope.
Well,
Yes.
I think I would agree with you on that.
And yes, and that's.
So we tried it for 13 years and it didn't work.
Sir, we've already had enough comments on this issue. We're ready to take a vote. So I would like, if anybody on the board has any further comments that they would like to make. Okay, we're all out
I
of
appreciate
discussion.
that. Thank you for
We
your
understand your
consideration.
positions.
That's all.
And thank you.
Thank you.
No, we
Really
really
appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Franco, can you take the vote?
Yes. Trustee Kunzi.
No.
Trustee Britton.
No.
Trustee Saviano.
Yes.
Trustee Sauter.
No.
3-1. Motion passes nay.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna go to, that is done. We'll go with board reports. Andy, would you like
still
to?
have
We did another
We
agenda.
got one more.
Where- Which one?
We've got,
Oh, E, I'm sorry, I had it checked off, I apologize. Okay, that'll take us to item E.
I'll move to approve an ordinance amending Village Code, Chapter 32, Departments, Commissions, and Other Organizations.
Second.
I read through this one and it seemed as though it was trying to expand control of the commissions, committees, so forth, when regard to attendance. You know, if anything over 51%, you know, it's gonna be a flag. I mean, it's important that we have whoever's being asked to serve on a board, that they be there. That's, I think, the least that can be expected, so, is there any other discussions on this? Anybody have
No,
questions?
No, it's
it seems to be good.
Okay. Franco?
Trustee Kunzi.
Yes.
Trustee Britton.
yes.
Trustee Saviano.
Yes.
Trustee Sauter.
Yes.
Okay, now we can go to board reports. So let's go around the room quickly. Andy, you want to start us out?
The Arts Council met recently. We're discussing doing a art show in our town. So the gallery space will be Black and Gray Brewing has volunteered to let us use their brewery, and we're aiming towards February, like the weekend right before Valentine's Day. So we're just starting to come up with the plan marketing for that. But we're also excited to have 2 new members that have been appointed that were great. They were at our last meeting. So that's an update. So I steal Arts Council updates.
Oh,
But
that's okay. And it'll be a juried art show, which is cool, because then we're
Jury.
judges and
We're gonna
we'll
be able
have
to
cash
attract-
prizes and. Mhm.
That I know a juried art fair is more of a challenge to
Yeah.
attract
Yeah, but
participants than a.
What's
non-jury.
awesome is that our Arts Council having the mural, we have a lot more people that follow our page now. So I
That's
feel
good.
like we'll have a good amount of individuals
Great. Awesome.
applying for that.
And that, you're open that for this year?
February 10th,
Oh, February. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
time to have people submit and create art and all that for it.
And is it that black and white thing? Is that?
Black and gray is the theme.
yeah, the theme is black and white artwork, but with an accent color of red for Valentine's Day, so that
No.
there'll be a cohesive feel of black and white plus red,
Yes.
optional.
Cool.
Awesome.
And I know we're going to do a proclamation, but just a reminder, it's National Suicide
Yes.
Prevention and Awareness Month. And
Yes.
so just encouraging people to reach out and also be a kind ear when someone needs it.
Scott, what do you got? Anything?
No report.
No report. Sarah?
Phil, thank you for the riverfront cleanup. It looks nice. I would love it if we could have a regular scheduled set up. I know Scott had the cleanup,
Well,
but
yeah,
the
that's
plant
trash
life cleanup was, there's a trash cleanup and a plant life cleanup. If we could regularly schedule the plant life cleanup, so it's not just one big at one time, that would be awesome. I know a couple things have come up tonight about the comprehensive plan. I heard you say 2024. I wrote multiple exclamation points after that in my notes. Thank you. Code review would also be fantastic because we have 1980s code going on.
There's
So
a lot of things that need to be reviewed.
so those were my only things.
Okay, did you have anything?
No report.
Chief?
Nothing tonight.
Joe?
Street program's going on, we should be wrapped up in a couple weeks.
Is that through, is it gonna be through November? I mean, or just, it'll end October? Couple, all right, good enough, good enough. Phil?
No report.
Okay, good. Okay, Erica?
No report, thank you.
Nothing, okay. Mine was just that I would like to remind everybody about Heritage Fest this weekend. We also, not Heritage Fest, I'm sorry, Oktoberfest. I work Heritage Fest Saturday for the Lions Club. I'm getting mixed up. But yeah, come on out. And we also need volunteers, which Franco, if you can make a note of it, I'll be available on Saturday night to be able to help with the ticket booth, wristbands, that kind of thing.
Okay.
I may be available for Friday as well. I'll certainly let you know. But yes, and as Trish had mentioned, there is a proclamation for the Hope for the Days National Suicide Prevention and Action Month. And so we'd just like to recognize that September is Suicide Awareness Month. And it was created to raise visibility of mental health and proactive suicide prevention resources in our community. So we want to start the conversation and destigmatize this and help connected people with any sort of support. So to be aware of that, there are agencies and help that we can provide information on through the Village Hall. So anybody who would like to get some more information on that can do so. Beyond that, that's all I have. So I guess that's it.
Do we have executive session?
No executive session, so that'll end our session. I appreciate the time. We went a little longer today, so
Got through a lot.
we did, and we'll see everybody in another 2 weeks. So with that, Franklin, we'll take the
Motion to
Oh,
adjourn.
motion to adjourn, right?
Second?
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none, motion passes.
Okay, thank you all.